Democratic Party needs to be, dare I say, more culturally normal. I believe that.
There's something fundamentally snake-like and disingenuous about trying to posture as if you're just a normal guy and I'm not into all that woke stuff after spending at least a decade actively implementing the most extreme identitarian ideology at every level of state policy. Guys, up first, we've got to check in with the alphabet people, or I forget who coined this, but somebody started calling it the Wi-Fi password community, and I've said that a couple times, and I do find it funny. Anyway, we've got to check in with some of their online avatars and influencers and even lawmakers, because they're not coping well. It all has to do with a California governor, Gavin Newsom, who is, of course, a very progressive Democrat who, in his state, has championed some of the most far-left pro-trans gender ideology policies imaginable, but because he's just trying to sound a little normal in interviews, many LGBT activists and online commentators are declaring him a traitor and crashing out over it. Seriously. So first, I'll just show you the Gavin Newsom clip that has these people worked up. I believe it's from a CNN interview. Let's listen to this.
No doubt that the Democratic Party needs to be, dare I say, more culturally normal. I believe that. Less prone to spending disproportionate amount of time on pronouns, identity, politics. More focused on tabletop issues, things that really matter, the stacking of stress in terms of electricity bills and child care costs and health care and obviously housing costs, and how easily we get trapped in that, how I've fallen prey to that. I mean, here I was, way out front on marriage equality, so I understand this.
So in one sense, I do agree with Gavin Newsom. Obviously, the identity politics and the extreme kind of, for lack of a better word, like woke ideology is toxic for Democrats. It's radioactive. And if they did focus on economic issues and ditch the identity stuff, that would be a much more effective brand for the party. Some of them are starting to move in that direction a little bit, but obviously you can't undo years and years of kind of reputational damage and association and cultural emphasis with just, one couple weeks of Kamala not talking about it so much on the campaign trail or what have you. But the reason that this irks me, though, from Gavin Newsom is that his entire career as California governor, he has doubled down on the most extreme ideas imaginable, supporting laws that allow anybody to declare themselves non-binary and walk into a woman's locker room, supporting laws that allow biologically male criminals, even dangerous ones, to be placed into women's prisons in California. And he has stood 10 toes down on the trans athlete unfair situations in schools. He's fought to keep medically transitioning minors and really died on that hill as well. So there's something fundamentally snake-like and disingenuous about trying to posture as if you're just a normal guy and I'm not into all that woke stuff after spending at least a decade actively implementing the most extreme identitarian ideology at every level of state policy. So that's the critique that I have. Not that what he's saying is wrong, but just that he's obviously an empty husk of a political snake oil salesman, right? And I find that really objectionable, and I don't trust for a second that if he were to run for president and win, he would somehow take this moderate approach. No, I think he'd put a lot of people in charge who agree with the decade that that he spent doing this stuff in California. Anyway, though, that's my criticism of it. But the LGBT online progressive kind of Twitter mob and media, and even apparently some lawmakers, have a very different take on this, and they are losing their ever-loving minds over it from the opposite direction. We're going to get into all of that. Let's look at the tweet, a tweet that is going viral here by the left wing, like very far left, and he claims to be non-binary, which just, of course he does, but he's a popular gay influencer. He's a male, and YouTuber, and he captioned this Gavin Newsom clip in this post and rewrote it as, "We abandoned LGBT people in the 2024 election and lost. Here's why we need to do it again." So he's kind of like suggesting that that is what Gavin Newsom believes or is saying, or that is what happened. Sir, put down the crack pipe. okay? You have had enough. The they them has we already knew lost touch with reality because he's got he/they pronouns. But the idea that the Democrats abandoned the LGBT community in the 2024 election is nonsensical. Just because Kamala didn't double down and stress her most unpopular extreme career-long support for radical trans issues like transitioning kids, and even she supported like taxpayer funded trans surgery for prisoners and illegal immigrants. And even she didn't even denounce that. In fact, there's a clip of her where she just says, "Oh, I'll just follow the law." So she like at most dodged the question. She never even rolled that back and said, "Nope, I'm not going to do that if we become president." So the idea that she turned her back on LGBT people is utter nonsense. And in fact, the LGBT vote moved more towards the Kamala Harris ticket in 2024, I believe, than it did in 2020. And it's just like the fact, if that's your interpretation of him, and Gavin Newsom is like a lifelong supporter of gay rights, like a very early adapter in terms of supporting gay marriage. Like I said, out there and way too out there on supporting radical trans activism. The idea that he is going to morph into some like anti-trans bigot and throw trans people under the bus or betray gay people just to get power isn't really happening. In fact, it's probably the opposite. It's probably that he might like he might pretend to be a little more moderate than he actually is on these issues, but it's not like he's going to become a social conservative on any of this or start denouncing these communities or anything. And if all he said, he didn't even say they actually had to change any of their views and positions. That's what's so interesting about this clip. He's not even telling Democrats, okay, we've got to come back to reality. This is what he should be saying if he actually had, common sense. But he's not even telling Democrats, all right, we've got to come out firmly against transitioning kids, against biological males in women's prisons, against trans athletes in women's sports, and we will stand up for trans adults' right to live their lives and be happy and do whatever, transition will make them happiest, but we're going to meet some common ground and shift our positions to be closer to where the public's at. That's what they should be saying. It's not what they actually are saying, though. He's literally just saying, talk about the annoying stuff less and present yourself more normal. Not even change the position, just talk about it less. And to them, that's like a profound betrayal. They literally, this group of Democratic lawmakers in California compared him to like people who opposed racial integration. Here, I have to read you this. I went and found the original statement because news articles were just like quoting one or two articles sentences from it, and I was like, well, let's find the full statement. It's actually worse than the parts that they quote. Here, reading here, the California Legislative LGBTQ caucus condemns Governor Newsom's dangerous rhetoric on quote unquote normalcy. So this is 14, I believe it's 14 LGBT lawmakers, all, of course they're Democrats in California, and they're condemning Gavin Newsom's dangerous rhetoric on normalcy and chilling with the pronoun. What in the chat GPT woke 2020 brain rot are we doing? Wait, I'm going to read you guys this statement. Sorry. It's deeply concerning for anyone, especially our elected leaders, to be defining who or what is culturally normal. By definition, it implies someone else is not normal. Bro, because some of you aren't normal. I'm sorry, but the non-binary Etherians with animal pronouns are not normal. And that's literally just a fact. I had one person, because we did this collaboration with Misha Petrov for the Normal Gays channel, we were obviously roasting the non-binaries because they're not real. We had this person like write this long comment, and then I clicked, and it was a person whose like name was on Instagram like Fox or something, like an animal name, and then it unironically had its pronouns listed in the bio. So I didn't reply. I didn't want to pick on the person. I just felt bad for them, or for her. I think it was a female, but it's like, you can't tell me that's normal or that it's somehow like dangerous for us to acknowledge that some people are weird and out of touch and delusional and out of touch with reality. I don't think pretending insanity is perfectly normal is actually the kind and loving thing to do. We should try to help some of these people, touch grass and connect back to sanity. But instead, no, everyone is normal. We're all special and perfect, and you can never criticize anything or you're dangerous. Yeah, they're still doing this. How? Anyway, I'll keep reading. Every member of the LGBTQ plus community has been accused of not being normal at some point in their lives, and dealing with that accusation is the essence of the struggle to come out, to take pride in oneself, and to be seen and treated as equal in America. Okay, sure, but I mean, the difference is that, like, it's not necessarily true with most LGBT, well, even some T people. It's like, also, what are we talking about when we say normal here? Because, like, statistically, something can be not the norm and therefore not normal, and that's just true, but that's not what he's talking about here. What he's talking about is people who come across as pushing minority fringe perspectives and ideas. He is not saying some humans are by nature of their immutable characteristic abnormal. He's saying the Democrats need to come off as culturally normal. I feel like what they have totally misunderstood what he is meaning by that statement, which I can't say surprises me, but is not great nonetheless. Anyway, more here. Oh my God. Before World War II, women being in the workplace was not culturally normal. Before the ratification of the 15th and 19th Amendments, women in communities of color wanting the right to vote was not culturally normal. Before Loving v. Virginia, interracial relationships were not culturally normal. Arguments about cultural normalcy have been used to justify exclusion, discrimination, and even violence, and must not be restated. I'm sorry. Gavin Newsom said, let's try to come off as normal and chill with the pronoun stuff. And these said to him, you're like the segregationists and the people who opposed interracial marriage and the women having the right to vote. This is why no one likes y'all. I'm sorry. This is why the like ultra woke flank of the progressive movement is one of the most like repulsive, not in the like, oh, I'm insulting you way, like actually repulsive in the sense that it repels people away from it, right? Because you can literally be like, hey, like, let's just not lead with the pronoun stuff. I mean, we're still, radical gender ideologues, and we're going to support all these crazy things, but let's just like try to come off as a little less out of touch. And they'll be like, oh, so you're like the people who were against interracial marriage, and you're like the people that support violence. It's like, no, Susan, we're not, in fact, like that. And Gavin Newsom is not like that. And you all sound absolutely deranged. I can't believe they're still doing this, unironically, in the year of our Lord, 2026. I'm sorry, I'll just read the last part of this. We cannot adopt the language of MAGA extremists who in the last year are actively seeking to roll back the rights of women, LGBTQ individuals, and marginalized communities on the basis of what they assert is culturally normal. If someone is transgender, they are normal and deserve the same rights and dignity as everyone else, full stop. Okay, well, he didn't even say the word transgender. He talked about like pronouns, which can just as easily refer to people who aren't transgender, that are just opening every meeting with, hi, I'm Susan. I have a Planned Parenthood sticker on the back of my Prius, and my pronouns are she, her. Like he wasn't even necessarily talking about transgender people and insulting them. But if you actually want trans people, and I'm going to speak about adults because I don't believe in the whole trans kids thing, but I guess they obviously do. If you actually wanted them to be treated with the same rights and freedom and dignity as everyone else, and I would agree, then you would actually agree with Gavin Newsom's message, because the presenting these ideas as part of a culturally normal platform and package is a necessary precursor to any form of democratic, small d, success in a country where like neo-pronouns is something 95% of people find ridiculous. So the fact that y'all love it and think it's normal and anyone who disagrees with it is basically the same as like segregationists, even if you believe that, which, I mean, you're delusional, but fine, even if you believe that, you still have to operate in political reality. And it is absolutely insane to bash Gavin Newsom for trying to do so. Sorry, not sorry. It just is. And I say this all as like a big Gavin Newsom hater, but I've had to defend him now twice in the span of the week from just delusional people.